How would you go about chronicling a war against the dead? Welcome back again to the library, Readers and Rapscallions. It's good to see everyone. Today, I guess you could say this isn't on our spooky season, given the subject matter, but I'm going to talk about, I just love this book so much. I've read this like twice. I've listened to the audiobook probably twice now. I'll talk about that in a minute. But this is World War Z. So, you might be familiar with the movie of World War Z, and whether you like that movie or not, pretty much the only thing it has in common with the book is the presence of zombies and the title, and that's about it. So this isn't a linear narrative story, World War Z. It's absolutely fascinating. It's following the role of a narrator after the zombie wars have ended, and he is going around the country, the United States, and also the world, and getting stories from the survivors of how everything happened. And these stories are all given to us like in chronological order. So you kick off your first story, you talk to the scientist who discovered patient zero, basically. You see how the plague spread and how it became global. So there's a super cool solution that the author has to that, because, I mean, this isn't like Left 4 Dead, where it's sprinting fast zombies. There's the slow, shambling zombies. And let's be real, in a real world where it's pretty much only spread by bite or fluids, that probably wouldn't spread very fast. It's the same reason why rabies isn't a global pandemic. It's a problem and it's dangerous, but it's not like a global thing that there's millions and millions of people with it. The same would be said about zombies, because it's spread in a similar way to things like Ebola or rabies. And the author has a really cool way of doing that. And you see through these stories, society starts to break down. You have this one chapter where it's somebody who's talking to the author, who is basically like now this survivalist mayor of this encampment of like super vigilant, almost like militaristic, just precise people surviving. But she was like a suburban mom before the war started, and it's one of those people who describes firsthand the utter collapse and how this was a creeping problem and a growing problem and getting worse and worse and worse. But there was effectively like a propaganda campaign, and also people kind of just lying to themselves and deciding it's not that bad, it's on the other side of the world. And then it all hits the fan, and then the world just breaks. And that's an awesome chapter. You also see through the progress of the war, there's one character, he has like 2 or 3 chapters, and he was a soldier in the United States. And he's talking about early on, he describes how it was originally fought like a conventional war, like stationing soldiers and artillery, and a lot of stuff that doesn't do any good against an enemy that's effectively infinite and can reanimate your casualties that you take, and can only be killed with a shot to the head. Napalm doesn't do anything to them, it just slows them down, it doesn't stop them. And it's this really great way of portraying the zombie hordes as this just unstoppable tide. There's one chapter of a guy who's, I think he's like on the International Space Station when it happens, so he's like looking down at Earth. There's a during the war, and so he sees that, and then there's these great masses going across Central Asia, because you have those huge population centers on that continent. But yeah, you get these just incredible stories of survivors, and it feels like a real war. And there's a little bit of establishing dialogue, because each chapter is told like it's the narrator talking to the person as an interview. So there's occasionally, especially in the very beginning, the very end of each section, there's like a back and forth between the two of them as you're like establishing it. and he'll describe like he's in these newly built communities because the zombie war is over, but they're still out and about, and so people have to be vigilant. It's like they go down into the oceans to like cross on the bottom of the water, so occasionally some will literally just walk out of the sea, or if they went up into the far north, there'll be freeze thaw cycles, and then a few of them will basically defrost every now and again and make their way down south, and so people still have to be on the lookout. But these new communities are all like up on stilts, and it's something where it changes the world the way that World War II did, where you have a completely different way of operating things before and after these conflicts. Like the world we knew it is gone. The modern luxuries are gone. People aren't living in like squalor, but everybody has a survivalist mindset. And because they all remember having to ration things, they all remember, the when people start fighting back and start winning, it's all because of precision and deliberateness and making sure that you're making all your shots count because you have limited bullets. And so that attitude carries over into the folks that he's talking to, and everybody kind of has this mindset. There's some chapters that are just like absolutely terrifying. There's one where he goes to Europe, and he has a couple in Europe. There's one where it's like about these people were defending this castle and using that as their stronghold. And then there's this one that's so terrifying where he talks to these people who are put in charge of clearing out the Paris catacombs, which are literally like these underground tombs all underneath the city of Paris. It's just like, oh my god. So it's like reading this, you really feel like these are like war stories, and you really feel that. And there's some crazy plot twists because there's also there's the zombie war happening, which is the main story, but there's like the politics of the world falling apart kind of happening in the background. And it's like, so for example, you have a totalitarian state like North Korea, and there's a story that one of the survivors is telling him where he's like, yeah, they all just disappeared. They didn't die. They didn't turn into zombies. They're just gone. And it's still like, mined around it, and nobody wants to go in to find out what happened. Stuff like that. And oh my god, this book is just so amazing. And then the audiobook. This is one of like 3 or 4 instances where I would actually suggest the audiobook over the printed version. I can kind of go back and forth with the concept of printed versus audio in general. Sometimes I lose my place in audio. I mind wanders, but also I don't always have time to sit and read 100 or so pages a day, even though I try to. But this is an ensemble cast in this audiobook. So that was how I kind of figured out that some of the characters come back for multiple stories, because you have the one soldier who was at that first battle where it was fought like a conventional war, and we just had no idea what we were doing. And then there's another one where he talks about how the war was fought once people had figured out, oh yeah, we have to fight these in a certain way because they're almost unstoppable, except for a shot to the head, and so we have to do that for every single one. Like artillery isn't going to work, napalm isn't going to work, none of that stuff is going to work. And they don't get tired, they don't have to eat, they can bring back the casualties that you take. This isn't an enemy like we fought before, so we have to fight them differently than we've ever fought anything. And so there's a whole battle scene like that, and that same soldier talks about, and then he also has like a chapter in the epilogue. And so you're kind of seeing the whole history of the war through the eyes of that person and also multiple people. But yeah, so with the audiobook, all these people he's talking to is a different voice actor, and so when he talks to the same person again, they come back. So you've got, I think, like Mark Hamill's on there, Nathan Fillion's on there, I think Simon Pegg is in a chapter, and then Max Brooks, who is the author, is the audiobook narrator. And it's not like an audio production like the Dune audiobook is, where you have like music and like it's a whole big thing. But having that ensemble cast really makes this feel like it's an old radio show almost, or like, no, this is like a documentary of something that happened. And that's how it's treated. It's not treated. It's not like super gritty, super serious. It's a book about zombies, but it's treated as if it is a war, a conflict that happened, and then now you're hearing about it. So I mean, like, we survived because they're in the aftermath talking about it. But I've never heard a story about like the supernatural in general talked about that way. It's always a linear narrative. Sometimes it's a framed narrative, but never in one where it's a series of interviews, and it's an oral history of the zombie war as the subtitle, and it is precisely that. This book is amazing. Thank you guys very much for watching Readers and Rapscallions. I'm hoping this is not going to be the only entry I do for spooky season. It might be because I have other reading priorities at this time, and this is a very, very busy time of year for me. But I'm going to do my best to bring at least one or two more before the end of spooky season. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next time in the library.